And we're recording. Okay, everybody, we're back. It is Thursday, November 22nd, 2018. This is the 55th anniversary of President Kennedy's assassination, and we are back for some more of Oliver Stone's JFK. We're just finishing up the scene with X here.
Oh, I can't believe they killed him.
Oh, technical difficulties.
Because he wanted to change things. In our time.
They've been doing it
In
all
our
through
country.
history. Kings are killed, Mr. Garrison. Politics is power, nothing more. Oh, don't take my word for it. Don't believe me. Do your own work, your own thinking.
The size of this is beyond me. Testify.
Me?
Testify.
For it to appear bigger than what it actually was.
No, I'd be arrested and gagged, maybe sent to an institution, maybe worse.
Is an argument to
I can give you
promote
the
conspiracy.
Yeah.
You have to find the foreground.
It's bigger than it appears to
Remember,
be.
you're the only
Well,
person to bring a
you don't
trial
really
on the
have
murder of
any
John
evidence that
Kennedy.
it exists to
That's
begin
important.
with,
It's
you know?
historic.
I haven't yet. I don't have much of a case.
You don't have a choice anymore. You become a significant threat to the national security structure. They would have killed you already, but you got a lot of light on you. Instead, they're trying to destroy your credibility. They already have in many circles in this town. Be honest.
They would have killed you, but you have too much light on you. Really? He's got more light on him than friggin' JFK?
If he was so dangerous, then they would have done something with him. They would have killed him.
Yeah.
If he was such a danger.
That's what he's saying. He's saying they would have killed you already, but you have too much light on you. You don't have more light on you than JFK or RFK or any of the other people who got killed. So it's like, if they can get to JFK, they can get to you. If they can get to JFK, they can get to Judy Baker. That's just the reality of it. You know what I mean? This is actually a very emotional scene. I remember as a kid seeing this and actually getting really emotional about it. That's the Lee Mansion right there.
Oliver Stone, in his design, is trying to appeal to sensitivity.
Yeah. Logical fallacy, appeal to emotion. But this is really nice. You know, it's a little kid who wasn't even alive when President Kennedy was in office, and I assume it's his father explaining to him, like, this is a great person here.
Mr. Shaw, sir, you are under arrest. Charged with conspiracy and entering into an agreement with other persons for the specific purpose of committing the crime of murder of President John F. Kennedy. We have a warrant to search the premises. It's my duty to inform you at this time. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to entertain.
Name, first, middle, and last. Clay Laverne Shaw. Address, 1313 Dalkeith Street, New Orleans. Ever use any aliases? Clay Bertrand.
Pause it right here. You ever use any aliases, Clay Bertrand? Way to fuck up the whole conspiracy, buddy. Like, why would you openly admit that?
There's something about that. I don't know if it's true that he said that.
I don't think it is. He denied being this person, you know? It just doesn't make sense. Like, why would... Even if he was using that alias, Clay Bertrand, in his activities relating to the assassination, okay, why would you openly admit that, knowing that the DA has arrested you and charged you with that
He
crime?
may not have known it. It's possible he may not have known it.
Oh, yeah, now that I think about it, that
I think
is
they
true.
got Bertrand from Dean Andrews, correct?
Yeah, or initially, I believe, yeah.
Maybe his nickname could have been Bertrand, but, you know, so what?
Yeah.
Mr. Clark, are you aware of the charges filed by District Attorney Garrison?
Yes, Mr. Shaw was included in our investigation. No connection found at all.
And why, if they did, is his name not mentioned once in the entire 26 volumes of the Warren Report, even if it is to clear his name? I doubt this Attorney General would qualify for my staff.
Garrison has presented absolutely nothing publicly which would contradict our findings. I know of no fact which would refute the Commission's conclusion that Lee Oswald was the lone killer.
Can I pause it here? I remember seeing that scene as a little kid, thinking, that guy really looks like Jim Garrison. And then I fast forwarded it to the credits, and I found that it actually was Jim Garrison. Honestly, I honestly sincerely believe that the cameo in Oliver Stone's JFK with Jim Garrison making a cameo appearance as Earl Warren, that is like one of the best cameos of all time.
I like Perry Russo's cameo.
Perry Russo is also very good, but I mean Jim Garrison himself as Chief Justice Warren, that's just it's too good, you know.
If I remember correctly, there's one other person playing a role that was part of the actual investigation. I can't remember who it was, but it's somewhere in this film that there's another person that was involved. Can't remember who it was right now.
Nah, I don't remember either.
Well, I congratulate Mr. Shaw. Most defendants have to wait for trial before they're allowed to produce sacred cows like the Chief Justice of the land as a character witness. Who is, of course, not under oath and free from the laws of perjury.
Sacred cows like the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Like, you're the Louisiana District Attorney, you know, the New Orleans District Attorney. Like, you, even if you don't like Earl Warren or you disagree with him, you should not disparage another officer of the court. Like, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, that's the highest office you can have in the American judiciary.
I really don't know how they did that back in the 60s, but today that would mean nothing at all. I mean, people criticize the highest officials all the time, even in the same field of profession.
Really,
Still, well, look at politics. I mean,
yeah, that's politics, though. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a district attorney, you shouldn't go around openly criticizing judges to the media like that. It's damaging to the system, you know?
But did he really do that, though, that way? I mean,
yeah.
But how do we know Jim Garrison really said those things like that?
Yeah, it might just be dramatized for the purposes of this movie.
Yeah, because, you know, we know that it goes both ways as to not just favorable to our opinion as to what they might add to the film. They might have added that to the film, too.
That's true. That's true.
You realize that you're damaging the credibility of the country and possibly destroying it?
Let me ask you, is the government worth preserving when it lies to the people? It's become a dangerous country, sir, when you cannot trust anyone anymore, when you cannot tell the truth. Let justice be done, though the heavens fall.
He was not telling an objective truth.
Yeah.
He was manufacturing evidence against a person where there was no genuine evidence to convict.
Yeah. And I mean, let justice be done. Sometimes justice being done means letting a guilty person go free. You know, that sometimes that's what justice looks like, you know.
And even drugged witnesses in their attempt to prove a conspiracy involving New Orleans businessman Clay Shaw in the murder of John F. Kennedy. John Chancellor was a cellmate of Willie O'Keefe's at Angola.
He said to be cut loose if he comes to the DA's office.
I sent him up for burglary.
Yeah, that's the issues you get into when you're using criminals as sources.
They wanted me to say Charles Bertrand. They said they'd get me a pardon.
Janet Williams comments on Willie O'Keefe's.
It's actually Ruth Payne.
That's not the Lee I knew. Absolutely not. I think Mr. O'Keefe must have seen someone he thought was Lee Oswald.
I didn't talk to nobody after the assassination.
I love John Candy, man.
Like I told the FBI, that call was a figment of my imagination.
Personally, I think he's quite ill mentally. With one half of his mind, he was able to go out and fabricate evidence. Then by some osmosis, he was able to convince the other half that the fabrication is the truth.
Actually, that's a very astute observation. I think that's exactly what he's doing.
I guess my reputation's alright with people watching that.
Because in some way, Mr. Garrison is indebted and tied to the mob. The more one looks,
those are real foul footage of monsters.
Yeah.
He has destroyed reputations, spread fear and suspicion, and worst of all, exploited this nation's sorrow and doubt. Jim Garrison has said, quote, "Let justice be done though the heavens fall."
Well, they really sure pull you in on Garrison's side. Yeah. Present him as a family man, present him as friendly to all these people. Here, pause it for a second. You know, it's it is The commentator on the news, he says that Garrison is exploiting this nation's sorrow and doubt, which I do agree with. That's pretty much exactly what Jim Garrison is doing. But he also says that, Jim Garrison seeks the truth, and so do we. And that is true. Conspiracy theorists and people who have alternative views on things, they love to present themselves as truth seekers. But the honest truth is, you know what? Those people don't have the monopoly on truth seeking. We are also seeking the truth.
They're not approaching the situation as though they want to get the truth out of it, because they're not using objective analysis of the evidence that's there. They're not most cases using logic. 9/11 truthers do this all the time. They totally discount the physics the same way they do in the JFK case. Example, they talk about how a plane, you should see portions of a plane in a terrorist attack. You should see portions of a plane as you would see in an accidental plane crash. When an accidental plane crash, the pilot was probably trying to land and not trying to dig himself into the dirt as far as he could.
Yeah, he's trying to bring it down with as little damage as possible.
Right, and it's just a difference in physics. Just like a single bullet theory, there's a difference in physics of the bullet that hit Kenny in the back of the head and a bullet that hit him in the back and traversed through soft tissue. It's totally different dynamics on the bullet.
Yeah, totally.
So what they do is discount things that doesn't do anything to serve their point. So you just get rid of it and don't use it.
Mm-hmm.
So in physics, it's one of those things. I forgot what we were talking about concerning this.
Truth seeking and how conspiracy theorists just deny.
Yes. So in general, putting things aside that doesn't work with your model.
Yeah. And I mean, if you have a good model, it has to be able to incorporate information that doesn't necessarily support it. You know what I mean?
Right.
If your model requires you to just discard things left, right, and center, then you have a bad model. If your conspiracy requires you to go around murdering people for another 20, 30 years, then you got a bad conspiracy, man.
And if your conspiracy continually requires repair and damage control in the light of evidence that comes forth, then there's something with it.
Yeah.
It shouldn't require so much maintenance.
Yeah, it should not. That's absolutely true. Absolutely agree with that.
Dr. Martin Luther King called his beautiful dream, expressed so dramatically during the 1963 March on Washington, was shattered tonight in Memphis, Tennessee by an assassin's bullet. Police seem to think that the single shot came from across the street. They say that they have found a Browning automatic rifle fitted with a marksman's scope on a sidewalk.
Now that was a good rifle. The Browning?
Yeah?
Yes.
What kind of rifle was it?
Browning.
What caliber?
He said the caliber, I think 30 caliber.
30 caliber, that's 7.62? 30 caliber is a full-size rifle cartridge, isn't it?
Yeah, there's different charge sizes to the 30 caliber though.
Oh, okay.
My God, what have they done? It's legend time.
But it was a powerful deer rifle that they used to kill Dr. King.
Fun fact, the guy who killed Martin Luther King, I think he ran away to Europe, didn't he? Didn't they catch him in Europe?
Who is this?
James Earl
Who is
Ray?
this? Hello?
I think so. Or was that?
I remember hearing somewhere that he stopped in Toronto on his way to Europe and he stayed in the Waverly.
I think that's true.
Yeah, and it's like, I know the Waverly, that is a dirtbag motel that you can rent rooms by the hour.
It might have been better back then.
Maybe. In my time, the Waverly in Toronto is a very dirtbag hotel.
Of course, we know who represented James Earl Ray, or at least on the defense team.
Who?
Mark Lane.
Oh yeah, I thought you were gonna say Mark Lane.
Yeah.
Oh man, anywhere. That guy is everywhere.
They count on it. There's nothing to be scared of.
Well, Gerald Posner hired him.
What kind of man
Well,
are you?
you know what? If I had some trouble and I needed some legal representation, I might consider hiring Mark Lane if I can afford him. You know, you got a little Rottweiler on your side, you know?
Or even get a bodyguard. Just get all these cells.
Honey, before this Kennedy thing, nothing mattered in this world more than your children. The other night, Chester tried to talk to you. You didn't even notice he was there. He came to me bawling his eyes.
I think they really did divorce in real life, didn't they?
Yeah. And I don't think it was that much longer after the trial that they separated, and the divorce was not too far behind.
I wonder what the real reason was. We can only speculate to that.
Of course I've changed.
It could be
My eyes have opened.
what they're presenting here, but it may not
Once
be.
you're open, believe me, what used to look normal seems insane, and now King. Don't you think this has something to do with that?
I know there was a lot of allegations that came up with Jim Garrison, like
I'm tired.
pedophile type stuff.
Yep. There were some allegations about that, something involving the New Orleans Athletic Club, and there was also some allegations that he was like a day drinker, that he, get drunk at lunch or things like that. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but I am aware of those allegations.
Yeah, I don't know if they're true either.
Raise our children.
I definitely know there was never any criminal prosecution,
charges?
no charges or nothing.
My whole life, too, you know.
They may be false.
It might
like
be.
some goddamn ostrich lives.
That goes both ways. Just as people who are Garrison fans try to discredit the official stance, and so too do other people try to discredit Garrison, right? So I mean, it could just as easily go both ways.
You never talked to me this
It's a matter of what can be objectively verified.
Either
Either way.
Yeah, either way. If you have a claim that cannot be verified, all you have is an unverified claim.
Well, it was funny when we were in the Dealey Plaza earlier. Every time we asked for someone to produce a reason or give us a reason why they believe a certain thing, they would say they heard about it, but the evidence that supported it has been erased or destroyed or hidden.
Yeah.
So you can't. That's negative evidence.
Yeah, evidence that cannot be produced is just as good as evidence that does not exist.
Exactly.
Like if you cannot produce the evidence, then that's just as good as evidence that doesn't even exist to begin with. That which is asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence.
Because they kept telling us what police officers have said, their testimony, which is no longer exists, you can't find. I could say, well, an officer could say that they saw a dinosaur on the nose.
Yeah.
And you can't disprove it because you could easily say that the document that once said that he saw a dinosaur is now hidden.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with feeling a little scared, Jasper. Telling the truth can be a scary thing sometimes. It scared President Kennedy, and he was a brave man. But if you let yourself be too scared, then you let the bad guys take over the country, don't you? Yeah.
I wonder what his children think. I'm pretty sure they'd be older than us.
Yeah, they would be.
They'd be relatively young, I wonder what their opinions are on things.
Damn, here's another one.
I have to pause here. Just a personal thing here. When I watched this film as a young adult and I would see these children, I would think, one day the National Archives is going to release all these files. I wonder if Jasper, I think his name is.
I believe, yeah.
If he's going to be there when this happens, I'm going to be there. This is before internet, before you can download documents or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking at this point they're just going to make files available that you can copy and take home with you or something like that. Because the advent of internet wasn't there. So in my mind, I'm thinking, the day this happens, I'm going to be there and I'm going to be there with Jasper. This is just my uneducated and very primitive conspiracy thinking mind.
Yeah, you can pat him on the back and say your dad was right all along, man. Your dad was right.
I'm going to go ahead and hit play again, but right before I do, I want you to look at this picture here.
On the left.
We talked about this earlier. That's Lee Oswald in the doorway. This doesn't show the whole picture, but John Wayne is sitting at a table right there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I can back it up, but I don't know if you want to do that.
Nah, it's cool.
If you Google it, you'll see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually found out about that today, that there exists a photo of Lee Harvey Oswald and John Wayne together.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool.
This is the first time I ever noticed this picture.
Yeah, I didn't even know that's what it was.
What the hell is going on? And never before has an extradition request from this office been refused.
We haven't tried to get Julianne Mercer in here.
No, she could get hurt.
Why?
Believe what's happening, these other people know. Yeah, but she's the best damn witness we have. I just don't want to do it. That's all. Now, what else? Well, you got your hate mail here, and your fan mail here.
Somebody sent you
bad
$3.
news is that the IRS requested an audit of your income from this office.
Well, I expected that 2 months ago. And they're wasting their time. Bad news is the National Guard just asked me to resign after 18 years. And well, maybe that's a good news. Never was as good as combat anyway. This is. Bill, any more on Oswald Shaw?
Yeah. They were seen together in Clinton in early September.
This, I think, is a deleted scene.
No, this is in the actual.
This was in the original theatrical release?
Yeah.
Okay.
To discredit the civil rights movement. Nobody really knows what they're doing there, but hell, they stood out like cotton balls. I got whites and colors on, but the last time I checked, there was nothing illegal with registering to vote. We still got the Negro junkie, Vernon Bundy, who saw him talking at the seawall near Lake Pontchartrain. But hell, it's tough, boss. Nobody wants to talk about Shaw. He's just...
You keep saying that. You're not digging.
I keep saying what?
You're not digging.
I'm not digging. You do my job. You do my job, I do your job.
You do my job, I do your job.
All right? Shaw denies ever knowing Pharaoh Oswald, right?
Right.
That proves he's a liar. Keep on it, Bill.
This is interesting. Oswald went to see the FBI 2 weeks before the assassination.
I see Special Agent Maudsley, please.
I'm sorry, he's many. Someone else help you?
Seems that Special Agent Hosty made 3 visits to Janet Williams' house, supposedly to keep an eye on Marina. He left a note. Hosty told the Dallas newspaper man that it was a warning
I wonder
to
what
him.
Marina
Stop
thinks about this film. I think I may have said
when
that.
Oswald was not present. She was not a citizen, so possibly he was threatening to deport her back to Russia. But what the note really said, no one knows. Hosty tore it up and flushed down the toilet.
It's just speculation, people, but what if the note was describing the
Glad he's
assassination
speculating.
on JFK?
He said he was speculating, which
Yeah.
I'm glad he did that.
Yeah.
Come on, people, think. That's the only reason to destroy it.
Pause here.
Because
That is not the only reason to destroy it. The reason that letter was destroyed was because Hoover ran, back in those days, Hoover ran the FBI like it was his own little fiefdom. And that guy, Hoover was a weirdo. He was just a straight up weirdo. Like, we all know the rumors about J. Edgar Hoover's personal lives. I don't know if that's true or not. But I do
Some of it was
know-
debunked, like the dress thing and all
Yeah,
that. That was debunked.
Like, that kind of never really made sense to begin with. But the thing is, Hoover could make or break any person's career. And if it had come out, well, like, it eventually did come out that Oswald had contacted the FBI and they could have arrested him for threatening a federal agent. But, this is all hindsight. They definitely should not have destroyed that note. But people put more into that than what it was. Like, Hosty had a family. His supervisor was looking out for him, trying to make sure that he didn't lose his job. He had a bunch of kids. I think his youngest kid had some kind of disability, some kind of developmental disability. I'm not exactly sure what it was. So, I mean, it was a stupid thing to do, and it made more problems than it solved. But try as I might, I can't find it within myself to blame somebody for covering their own ass. You know what I mean?
I can blame them. I don't think they should have done the things that they did to cover their ass. But the thing is, you have to differentiate them covering their ass and them covering as a conspiracy, because this is purely something that they just didn't want known so that they would look bad, and of course they didn't want to make Hoover look bad.
Yeah, or the FBI as an institution.
And that would be a reason to burn a note or destroy the note.
Yeah.
We see this more than once.
Yeah, well, I guess in the strictest, most literal sense, it is destruction of evidence, even though it's not evidence related directly to the crime of the assassination of President Kennedy. It's still destruction of evidence,
If it's something conspiratorial or would outline what happened and who would be involved, I mean, what would it say? Would it be Oswald going in there and saying, "Hey, I told you guys I don't want to do this," or what's the speculation of what's in the note?
Yeah. And also, I don't think it could have been that, because what was he going to do? Hand the secretary at the front desk a note? Is Agent Hosty in? No, he's not. Okay, can I leave a note for him? Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, Hosty, the assassination is going to happen tomorrow. I'll be in position at 12 p.m. sharp. Make sure the other shooters are where they need to be. And then you just fold it up and give it to her. Like, once you're out the door, she can just read the note and be like, oh, shit, It doesn't seem probable.
they would have kept it. Because it makes their case against the angry lone nut that much stronger.
They would have kept it, but that doesn't really make sense, because this is something in advance. If you're supposing that he was framed, of course they would have kept it.
Yeah. If they were setting him up, of course they would have kept it.
Right, but if he's not being set up, then it's natural that he would have got rid of it.
Yeah.
So actually, that argument kind of works against what he's actually trying to put forth.
Yeah. The fact that they destroyed it, that's more evidence that they're not trying to frame him and they're not trying to set him up. Because if they were, they would have kept it.
And all the things that are alleged in this movie that were faked, they could have just faked the note and made it say whatever they want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Remember the New Orleans meeting with Agent Quigley the day he got arrested? There again, Quigley destroyed the notes from the interview. I think we can raise the possibility that Oswald not only was an informant, but that he may well have been the original source we have for the telex dated November 17th, warning of Kennedy's assassination in Dallas on November 22nd.
I think that's a huge leap to make, to say that Oswald was the original source of that.
Officer, he gave me a copy of this.
Because they get those.
Nothing was
I mean,
done.
it's not
went ahead on schedule. And this wasn't even
abnormal
mentioned
thing
in the
for them to get a warrant,
That a
right?
militant revolutionary group may attempt to assassinate President Kennedy on his proposed trip to Dallas, Texas.
Has anybody ever actually seen that memo?
The telex was removed from all the files in all the city as an obvious embarrassment to the Bureau.
Pause it for a second. He says that Garrison says that he has a copy and it was given to him by the guy in one of the FBI field offices. But it's like, have we ever seen that? I don't recall ever seeing that memo.
I don't doubt it exists. But I think they probably got more of those than what we know. Because I think any president in office is going to have their fair share of threats. Yeah, so I take no issue with this at all.
It was like what we were talking about with Rose Cherami at the start of this movie. You know, like a broken clock can be right twice a day. Every time the president goes anywhere, there's always going to be intel that says this group is planning something. There's chatter with that group, etc., etc. And I mean, 99 out of 100 times, nothing comes of it.
Well, when you're researching a conspiracy, you're going to use everything you can possibly get that point towards conspiracy.
Yeah.
And this is just one of those things.
And it doesn't even really tie. A revolutionary militant group might attempt to assassinate President Kennedy on his proposed trip to Dallas.
I think he probably knew that.
Yeah.
I think he probably knew that they were going into nut country. They knew that ahead of time.
Yeah, I think he said those exact words. He showed Jackie the black bordered advertisement in the newspaper, and he said, "We're in nut country now."
I believe Oswald was sending information through Holstein. I have a hunch that from the get-go, Oswald had infiltrated this group, probably Cuban right-wing extremists. He was told to be at the book depository that day by his handlers to either prevent the assassination or to take part in it. I mean, they could have told him.
That's a pretty far dichotomy. He's either there to prevent it or take part in it. You know, like, well, which side of that are you on?
So that Kennedy would have to reverse his policies on communism. It doesn't really matter what they told him.
Because it will have
He was
to
under
be
order.
slowed down to
He was a foot soldier.
And you can't miss. He is a dead duck.
I don't buy it, Chief. Why would the FBI cover it up? A telex that disappears from every single FBI office in this country.
There's a word, Bill. Orders.
For a cover-up? Jesus, Bill, don't you have enough proof for the FBI's complicity?
Maybe I got just a little bit more respect for this country's institutions.
My
You
God.
do
How much more
do you need? Huh? You tell me how the hell you gonna keep a conspiracy going on between the mob, the CIA, the FBI, and Army intelligence, and who the hell knows what else, when you know for a fact you can't keep a secret in this room between 12 people. We got leaks everywhere. I mean, we are going to trial here, y'all. I mean, what the hell do we really got? Oswald, Ruby, Bannister, Farrah are dead. Shaw, I mean, maybe he's an agent, I don't know. But as a covert operator in my book, he is wide open for blackmail because of his homosexuality.
Shaw's a toehold, Bill.
Totally.
I don't know exactly
That's
what
why
he
we
is.
know
I
he
don't
wouldn't
really
have
care.
been an intelligence
I do know
operative
his
to
line
begin
through
with.
his
He's
teeth, and I'm
a
not
security
gonna let
risk.
go of him.
Yeah, and for those reasons, you're gonna go to trial against Clay Shaw, Chief. Well, you're gonna lose.
That's true.
We should be investigating our
You are
mafia
going to
deals here
lose.
in
That's
New
what
Orleans.
happened in real
Now,
life.
I can buy that a hell of a lot easier than I can the government. Ruby is all mob, knows Oswald, sets him up. Hopper, Trafficante, Marcello's, they hire some guns to do Kennedy. And the government doesn't want to open up a whole can of worms there because it used the mob to try to get to Castro. You know, Castro being assassinated by the mob by us, it sounds pretty wild to junk you citizen. So, they closed the book on JFK. Makes perfect sense to me.
I don't doubt their involvement, Bill, but at a lower level.
Oh, come on.
Could the mob change the parade route, Bill? Or
Wasn't changed.
eliminate the
It
protection
wasn't
for the president?
It wasn't
Could the mob
eliminated.
send Oswald to Russia and get him back? Could the mob get the FBI, the CIA, and the Dallas police to make a mess of the investigation? I mean, could the mob get the Warren Commission appointed to cover it up? Could the mob wreck
They
the
messed the
autopsy?
investigation
Could the
up on
mob
their own.
influence the
Yeah.
national media? to
They
go to
didn't
sleep?
need the help
Since
in
when has the
messing it
mob
up.
used anything but 38s for hits up close? Mob wouldn't have the guts or the power for something of this magnitude.
It's a very low magnitude.
Assassins need
It's a
payroll.
person shooting a rifle.
Schedules,
Since
time,
when does the
order.
mob use anything but a 38
This was a
for hits up
military
close?
style
People
ambush
use
from
9mm
Scott
all the
Field,
time.
top, with
All the
Lyndon
time.
Johnson waiting
9mm. If you go into any
so now
place
you're
that
saying
sells
Lyndon Johnson
bullets,
was
they
involved?
sell
The
9mm
President of the
bullets.
United
for
States.
sure.
Bill Lyndon Johnson got $1 billion for his Texas friend Brown and Root to dredge Cameron Bay for the military in Vietnam.
Boss,
just for opening.
boss, are you calling the president a murderer?
If I'm so far from the truth, why is the FBI bugging our officers? Huh? Why are witnesses being bought off and murdered? Why are federal agencies blocking our extraditions and subpoenas when we
Because
can't-
they
I
know
don't
you're
know.
nuts.
I don't, maybe
They know
there's some
you
rogue
have
element in the
nothing
government or
to
something.
this
So-called
case.
conspiracy to cover it up?
Yeah, what do you
Never
think?
did
The
Shakespeare
director of the CIA is going to be extradited to Louisiana? Like, come on.
Julius Caesar? Brutus and Cassius, they too are honorable men. Who killed Caesar?
Look at the diagrams on the wall there.
Yeah,
10, 12
we've all
centuries.
seen that diagram.
Sarah
All
White.
it takes
Yep.
is one Judas Bill, a few people on the inside, Pentagon, CIA.
This is Louisiana, Chief. I mean, how the hell do you know who your daddy is? Because your mama told you so. You were way out there taking a crap for the wind, boss. And I, for one, am not going along on this one.
Chief, I've had my doubts all along about Bill. Been fighting us all along.
Well, we need him back.
Boss, Broussard wasted a whole damn month trying to prove that mob boys like Jack Ruby and Brading are hooked up with Hunt All.
I don't trust the
I
guy.
will not hear this, gentlemen. Now, I value Bill as much as any person here. It's time we all made room for someone else's ideas, including me. Maybe Oswald is what everyone says he is, and I'm just plain dumb about it.
I've seen him copying files, leaving here late at night.
I just plain don't trust
Maybe
him.
you two didn't hear what I said. Now, I said I will not tolerate infighting among the staff.
I'm afraid I cannot work with Bill Broussard anymore.
Are you giving me an ultimatum, Lou?
What?
Are you giving me an ultimatum?
Well, if that's what you want to call it. No, I never thought it'd come to this. I guess I am.
Well, I will not have any damn ultimatums put to me, Lou. I'll accept your resignation.
Well, you sure got it. You are one stubborn son of a bitch. And you're making a hell of a mistake.
Boss, aren't you being a little hard?
No, I don't think I am, Susie. Anyone else?
This is a deleted scene.
Yes, it is.
This was not in the original movie. And a female member of Garrison staff, that's pure fiction. There was no female member of Garrison staff.
Welcome, Mr. Attorney Garrison. So, you're investigating the murder of President
You
Kennedy.
know this is a
I must
recreation
say,
from
we've heard
Garrison's
some
interview by
strange
Johnny Carson,
things
right?
Yeah.
coming out of
Have you
your
seen
office
it?
in New Orleans.
No, actually, I
First,
haven't.
you heard
It's
that
a complete
Cuban
misrepresentation.
exiles
Totally.
killed the
Really,
president,
eh?
Yeah.
Then the mob. Now
What did Carson? I think Carson took him to task a little bit, didn't he?
He did, but Garrison did have some good comebacks. I will give Garrison that. He had a very quick legal mind.
Yeah.
He was able to hang with
Is there anyone
a
besides
comedy
Lee
mind
Harvey
like
Oswald who you think didn't
Johnny Carson.
conspire
Pretty
to
good.
kill the president?
Well, let's just say this, Jerry. I've stopped beating my.
I recommend you see that exchange.
Yeah, definitely. I'll look into it.
Johnson, we know he has some answers.
Jim Garrison did actually have some comebacks that were
Now,
good.
Oh, yeah.
there have been a number of reports in reputable news media, Time, Newsweek, our own NBC, that you've gone way beyond the legal means available to you as a prosecutor, that you have intimidated, even drugged witnesses, bribed them, urged them to commit perjury. Do you have a response to this?
Your faith in the veracity of the major media is touching, Jerry. It indicates that the age of innocence is not yet over. But ask yourself, if we'd learned on November 22nd, 1963, that the premier of Russia had been shot from a Moscow office building by a lonely capitalist sympathizer who himself was then liquidated by a patriotic Muscovite within 48 hours while surrounded by armed police, I think it would be pretty apparent to any free-thinking person that a coup d'etat and a transfer of power had just taken place in the Soviet Union. And we would not be asking questions or attacking Jim Garrison or his record. We would, in a free-thinking society, be asking hard questions about why he was killed and what forces were opposed to him.
Jim, you know, there are some people who might say you're paranoid.
I'm going to pause right there. The gist of the exchange between Johnny Carson and Jim Garrison in the real interview, Johnny Carson brought him to task on evidence as opposed to, against speculation. Because he would keep asking, every time Garrison would come up with something, he would ask Garrison how he knew that and was there evidence of it. And Garrison said, I believe it, and when the trial comes, we'll show you the evidence.
Yeah. That's a reoccurring theme amongst conspiracy theorists. Just wait. The evidence is coming.
Yep.
The evidence is coming. Any day now. Any day it's gonna get here.
Maybe I better show you some pictures so you can begin to understand what it is I'm talking about. These are arrests. Now, these arrests were photographed minutes after the assassination. Now, they were never shown to the American public.
Jim, I'm sorry, these pictures can't show.
I'm going to have to stop right there. In the actual footage, they were shown very clearly and held up to the camera, and the camera stayed on them for a little bit of time. And so this is a complete misrepresentation of what really happened. And he showed the actual photographs that we're all familiar with of the tramps being escorted by the police through the plaza.
Yep.
On TV.
Well, sure.
No, I'm sorry, they can't.
No, the camera can pick these.
Jim, I'm sorry. They can't. We have
that didn't happen at all.
Libel laws,
Yeah.
Those men you just saw were arrested in Dallas minutes after the assassination. They were never seen again. No record of arrest.
Not
no
true.
mugshot. No fingerprints.
I don't know if there were mugshots and fingerprints, but there definitely was a record of their arrest.
Yes, there was.
I've seen those records. We also know who they are. We know their names, and the one guy's sister later identified him in one of the photographs.
Well, the way it happened was back in the 1980s, the Dallas Police Department, completely independent of the federal government and their investigation, did release some information from their records that they had about the assassination. And among those were the 3 arrest reports of the 3 tramps that were taken into custody off of the trains in the rail yard. And their names are, I'm going off memory, Harold Doyle, John Jitney, and Gus Abrams. After those files were released in the 80s, the ARRB come around, and actually some FBI agents were tasked with locating these guys. 2 of them were located and interviewed. One had passed since. Abrams had passed away. They interviewed the first 2 guys, and they explained everything that was going on that morning, why they were in Dallas, where they were trying to go, how long they were together, how they got arrested, how long they stayed in jail, when they were released, all those things. The one that they didn't interview because he had passed away, Gus Abrams, they spoke to his sister. And his sister, they showed her pictures of the tramps, and she said, yes, that's my Gus, or something like that.
Yeah.
She said, that's my somebody. And so he's identified too. So it is very well known who these guys are. And for those who actually advocated conspiracy, I highly recommend you listen to Rob Clark's episode on the Tramps. Rob Clark, as everyone knows, is a firm conspiracy believer, but he's very realistic on the Tramps, and we know who they are, and the evidence, I don't know why it can't be accepted. You can hypothesize that the Tramps are someone else, but then you're not going to have what is already established: a police record, witnesses that were involved, and photographs which look like the actual guy. So that's what I have to say on that.
Who were they? Yeah, what the hell are you doing here?
I'm sorry about the other day, Chief. I didn't mean to walk out on you like that.
This is
So you came
the
off
director's
and
cut
told me
part 2.
Yeah, this is
No,
also a
boss.
deleted scene.
I just got word there's going to be an attempt to kill you somewhere between here and New Orleans. A mob guy was brought down by Shaw from Canada. This is serious, Chief. You're going to need a bodyguard tonight if it is.
Yeah, when you're in the Army, did you have a chance to find out what a order meant?
Yeah.
You happen to remember my order and everyone on the staff not to participate in passing on these endless rumors about how somebody's going to be killed?
Yes, I do, boss, but this is...
No, there's no but. There's no but in a military situation, Broussard. I don't appreciate your dumping this paranoid garbage on me. And I don't appreciate your inability to follow a simple order, especially when it means I'm personally going to end up paying for your flight back to New Orleans. Let's get you a ticket.
Boss, I'm sorry. I'm just looking out for you.
Get a receipt.
Get a receipt.
Yeah, Texas.
Yeah, man. Business expense.
As to whether or not this happened, we totally rely on Jim Garrison for the truth.
I think that this scene is really meant to demonstrate Garrison's growing paranoia. You know, I heard a story one time that he would take a cab home from work, and when he got to his house, as he was approaching the house, he'd get his money for the cab fare out. And as the cab got to the house, he'd quickly toss the driver the money and run out of the cab to his front door and go inside, you know? I mean, he is very paranoid.
Yeah, where you going? It's me, Samuel. Hey, how long were you in that restaurant last night?
Goddamn business.
And why would they have so many guards in on something like that?
Yeah. And why would the cop want to know how long he was in the washroom for, you know?
That seems all fake to me.
Yeah, yeah.
I doubt that really happened.
I think that scene is meant to demonstrate Garrison's growing paranoia. But that just comes with the territory, man. If you immerse yourself into the world of conspiracy and you actually believe that stuff, then it's only natural that you're going to get paranoid. And the longer you're in it, the more paranoid you're going to become.
It's almost time for the trial, isn't it?
Yeah. I think after this scene, it's the scene with Robert Kennedy's assassination, and then we're in the trial.
Jim, bad news. Bill's turned. I think he's given everything we got to the feds.
We studied the memos and there was nothing there, Chief. Nothing. We went to confront him and the landlady said that the son of a bitch just took off. Left everything.
It's unbelievable. I'm sorry. Maddie, could you get Mr. Gasson a
I don't understand. What are they talking about? We went to look at the memos and there was nothing there.
Bill doesn't
What
scare that easy.
memos?
Somebody got to his thinking.
What do you mean
Never
there's
that good
nothing there?
Well, he sure fooled us.
Some kind of records that he took.
No, don't turn it down. Turn it up. I want to see
Public
this.
opinion polls show Senator
What's
Robert
happening?
Kennedy
He's
is
winning.
leading Senator Eugene McCarthy of Minnesota. Both
He'll never
strong
make it.
anti-Vietnam War candidates.
If he wins, they'll kill him.
Obviously striking a
They'll
strong
stop the
chord with
war.
voters. Whoever wins tonight will
They're gonna kill him
emerge
before they let him be
favored by
president.
Vice President Humphrey to win the nomination in Chicago in August. That man now seems to be Senator
Boss,
Kennedy.
with Broussard, they have everything. All our witnesses, our strategy for the trial, we got to double check all his work. There could be false leads. We can't go to trial. We don't have a prayer.
I don't think so, Al.
I have to agree with Al, boss. This is not one we're going to come out on.
Remember the Hemingway story, The Old Man of the Sea? Bill fisherman manages to catch this great fish. Fish so huge that he has to tie it to the side of the boat in order to get it back in. But by the time it reached the shore, fish had long since been picked apart by sharks. Nothing was left but the skeleton.
And that's what's going to happen to us.
Then what did all this trouble for, boss? It's a means to an end. Now this war has two fronts. In the court of law, we hope against the odds to nail Clay Shaw on a conspiracy charge. In the court of public opinion, it could take another 25, 30 years for the truth to come out.
No, public opinion was always on your side. The public was eager for somebody like a Garrison to come along and give them what they wanted. And when somebody like Garrison eventually did show up and did give them what they wanted, they seized upon it.
I thought most people thought that they went along with the Warren Commission at that time, and then after the Garrison is when what you're talking about took place.
You know what? We should actually. I'm gonna look right now. Well, the one I have, I don't think it shows the exact years, but I believe that it was after like 1965, 1966 that public opinion began to turn.
Yeah, because you did have Mark Lane and everybody before Garrison.
1967.
I think it really turned after Garrison.
Yeah, I guess.
It probably started to bend with
Mark Lane, Edward Epstein, those first generation guys. Yeah. Yeah, this one has 50% believing one man acted. Oh wait, no, that's the other one. It had 36% believing one person acted alone in 1967, and then that number drops to 11% in 1975.
We had the HSCA ramping up by that point, or initiating, I think around that time.
That's real footage.
Yep.
Actually, pause it for a second. If you've ever actually seen the footage that they just showed, the real footage, it is one of the most, like, I've seen a lot of messed up things in my time, man, but it is seriously very difficult to watch because the cameraman, you can hear him crying, and the guy he's with is telling him, shoot it, please, you have to shoot it, just please shoot it. And you can hear the guy who's actually shooting the camera like crying and be like, oh my god, and the other guy's yelling at him, shoot it. Honestly, I've only ever seen that one time in my life, and I can vividly recall it. You know, it's hard to watch, man. It's ugly.
I've seen it like this, but I haven't seen what you're talking about.
I'll try to find it and send it to you, but I'm telling you now, man, it's ugly. It's ugly.
Yeah, I could bet. But we watched President Kennedy's head fall apart.
So. I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, despite all the shit I've seen in my time, that still shook me.
Probably the accompaniment of sound contributes to it.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, Sissy Spacek. 25 years ago.
She always was very attractive, I thought.
You know what? She's kind of got that plain Jane girl next door thing going on, but I kind of like that.
I liked her when she did this, but I was kind of weirded out by her for years because of her role in that movie Carrie. She was much younger. But I was a kid then too, so kind of freaking me out for a little bit until I got a little bit more mature and started to really be able to appreciate her.
Oh yeah.
Shot him down.
And I think this was the moment when a lot of people really began to buy into this whole kind of like, I want to say New World Order kind of thing. I know that's not exactly what we're talking about here, but I think when Robert Kennedy got killed, it really started, people really started to freak out. They were like, anytime somebody comes along and tries to do something good, the evil powers that be are going to show up to put a stop to it, And I one time saw a documentary about Robert Kennedy, and there was this guy talking, and he had worked for Martin Luther King, and he was like, we lost JFK, and then we're like, well, at least we still got Martin Luther King and Bobby, and then we lost Martin Luther King, and then we're like, okay, well, at least we still got Bobby. And then we lost Bobby.
I
And
think
we
we
were
lost Bobby before Dr. King, didn't we?
No.
Dr. King was first?
Dr. King was first, yeah. And
yep, you're right.
After they lost Bobby, they were just like, okay, fuck it. There's no point in trying to do anything, you know?
Going back to our previous discussion about Garrison in the mysterious death claims, if they killed Bobby, it would have been much easier to kill Garrison.
Yeah.
Because
actually, you know
Bobby's
what?
on the list.
Yeah, pause it for a second. There is a point I want to make about the RFK assassination here. Oftentimes when we're discussing the JFK assassination, what we're told is, well, you know, Oswald never admitted it. He never had his day in court. He was never convicted. Therefore, we must assume that he was innocent and that there was a conspiracy here. Okay, now compare that to the RFK case. RFK, the shooter, was apprehended immediately at the scene with the literal smoking gun still in his hand. A bunch of people saw him shoot RFK. He was not killed by a Jack Ruby type character. He had his day in court. I don't know if he was found guilty or he pled guilty. I think he might have pled guilty, and he clearly explained to us, this was my motivation for killing this guy. I'm a Palestinian and I support Palestine, and Bobby Kennedy supported Israel. That's why I killed this guy. And Sirhan is alive today, right now, sitting in his cell. So it seems to me like people are going to say conspiracy no matter what. If the guy gets killed and doesn't go to court, conspiracy. If the guy does not get killed, goes to court, pleads guilty, explains why he did it, conspiracy.
It's the stature of the victim.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like in all these other cases, that when someone like that dies, even if it's not even a political figure, it could be a musician like John Lennon.
Yeah.
They make a conspiracy out of it.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, it's unfathomable that a human being will kill another being a human being of great stature without it being a conspiracy.
Yeah. You know, people just don't like to believe that shit can happen, and, you know, is life really that precarious? Could you absentmindedly step off the curb one day and get smoked by a bus? And the uncomfortable truth is that, yeah, if you absentmindedly step off a curb, you can get smoked by a bus.
I felt close to that happening to us both when we were up on that bridge, trying to find out where Ed Hoffman was standing.
Yeah. Back in the day when you could smoke on the bench. Awesome. I never understood what that meant. Is that Latin? Oye, oye, oye? What does that mean?
They usually use Latin.
Yeah, but do you know what that means?
That's Clay Butcher. That's the man I saw at David Ferris.
That's who you say you saw. A confessed homosexual.
A confessed homosexual.
Convicted of pandering and solicitation. A man who has lied about
you couldn't
everything.
say that today.
No.
And now wants to be taken.
Today he might get disbarred for doing some shit like that.
Yes, sir. He was at the Pontchartrain wall.
Get out of the well of the
with
court.
The man who shot the president.
Why are you standing right in front of his table?
I remember him because of his limp.
A heroin addict injected
that was
himself
odd, I
alcohol.
thought.
Yeah.
Barely
You're now
conscious
he's
of
back
his
on the
surroundings.
stand. You are not ever supposed to enter the well of the court, the area between the council tables and the bench. If you actually enter that area without permission, the bailiff will tackle you. Like, you are not supposed to approach the bench without permission. It's called the well because there's supposed to be like this huge gap between you and the bench. You
More
know?
than 5 years ago, for 2 minutes, it's fair to say you could be mistaken.
It's just a figment of my imagination. The cat's stealing you. The oyster shucking you, I told him. You got the right ta-ta, but the wrong ho-ho. Boyfriend is not sharp. Scout's honor. And you can tell him I said so.
Objection, Your Honor. This office has won a conviction of perjury against Dean Andrews on this matter.
Exception taken. That case is on appeal. Mr. Goldberg.
Well, like that, pause it for a second. That was something Garrison did. He would have these cases, and if they didn't go the way that he wanted them to go, he would come back like a day or two later and charge you with perjury.
To me, it seemed like her being able to say that is inadmissible. I mean, because what's the relevance of it? I mean, I guess it's an arguable point, but it doesn't seem like it seemed like that would be something that would be objected to.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, he did appeal it, and from my understanding, I believe he won that appeal.
It's like using information from another case to prove this case. It's you know, and they're independent. It seems like that would be inadmissible, but
yeah,
or at least objectionable.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, if you're a good defense counsel, you are going to object just to get that objection on the record to lay the groundwork for a later appeal, you know, so that you can show, hey, at the time I objected to this, and this is, you know,
you had drinks,
improper conduct.
And under the influence discussed killing Kennedy. Is that not so?
Yes, I did.
Is it not also true that you fingerprinted your daughter when she went to Louisiana State University?
Yes, sir, I did.
And is it not also true that you fingerprinted her when she returned at the end of the semester?
Yes, I did.
Why?
Well, I wanted to make sure that she was the same girl I sent away.
Yeah, they're laughing at you because that's pretty crazy, bro. I know there's this conception like you send your kids away to school and they grow up, they're at a home, they mature a bit, and then they come back a year or two later and they're different. You know, but I mean, in this case, the guy is taking it literally, you know?
The defendant did not have his lawyer present when asked. From time immemorial, it's been standard booking procedure to ask an agent. I call him as I see.
I have to go back to Reetz's research on this Bertrand part, because I remember reading something where it was kind of, which makes me believe today that it was bogus.
Yeah. Honestly, this is why I wanted you here, Dave. If you're listening to this, bro, I can only imagine the amount of cringe that you're experiencing right now from me and Fred. Both of us put together are not as good as you, dude. That's why I really wanted you here. Unfortunately, it couldn't happen.
Oswald?
No, I did not.
Ever called Dean Andrews?
No, I did not.
And have you ever met David
Did Shaw actually go on the stand?
Wouldn't even know what he looked
I
like.
believe he
Pictures
did.
have been shown.
I'm not entirely
Did you ever
certain.
use the alias
Check
Clay
that,
Bertrand?
but yeah.
No, I did not.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
I mean, that's pretty good for his attorney to get that on the record. It's short and sweet. Did you know these people? No. Did you do this? No. Did you do that? No. Okay, thank you.
Let it be noted that my office is charging Clay Shaw with outright perjury.
Objection.
The answers he's given in this courtroom today, not one word of truth, having escaped his.
Objection.
Now sit down. That's the man.
He is out of order.
Another misnomer about this
There
film.
was a conspiracy involving.
Another misnomer about the film is the fact that his team handled this trial. He didn't even prosecute the trial at all. He took no role in the actual arguments of the trial, Jim Garrison.
Yeah, he wasn't even in the courtroom when the verdict was read. And rather than what they're going to show us in this movie where he takes it with like this quiet dignity, according to the sources we have, he flew into a total rage. You know?
Clay Shaw. We must first prove that there was more than one man involved in the assassination. To do that, we must look at the Zapruder film, which my office has subpoenaed. The American public has not seen that. The American public has not seen that film because it has been kept locked away in a vault for the last 5 years in the Time Lock building in New York City. There's a reason.
Isn't that pretty cheap though, to put your team up there with the, there's no evidence in the case. They don't even have any faith in the case, and you're putting them out there. You're not even participating. I think that's pretty cheap.
Yeah, that's lame. If you're gonna say it, own it. You know what I mean? If you're gonna do it, do it. You know? Where I come from, there's an old expression. It goes, shit or get off the pot.
Yeah.
I've been there. I stood there today.
Yeah.
Amazing. Boom. Okay, so apparently that's an entry wound. I learned that today.
Yeah.
Some enlightened gentlemen on the grassy knoll took it upon themselves to educate poor ignoramuses like Fred and myself. We don't know nothing about physics. We don't know nothing about ballistics. Just, woefully inept.
And the people that said that, as soon as you start talking about that, they change the subject or walk away.
Yeah, gish gallop.
Let's talk about physics then. You brought that up. Let's talk about it. Because the guy brought up Beverly Oliver.
Yeah.
I said, well, you brought that up, the Babushka lady. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, he didn't want to deal with me anymore. I'm a government shield. I don't even want to see you. Don't even talk to me. Or whatever he said.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, if you don't want to talk to me, okay, fine, go away. I'm doing my thing over
I said
here,
pretty
bro.
much that.
Yeah. We got that on tape.
Picture speaks 1,000 words, doesn't it?
Yes, and one of those words is, well, a couple of those words is large wound on the right side of the head.
Yeah. Like, bullets do not
They had an open and shut
make
case.
a wound
3
like
bullets,
that
1
upon
assassin.
entry. They just don't.
But 2
Like,
unpredictable
people who try to
events
tell you
happened
that
day
just
made it
don't know
virtually
what they're
impossible.
talking
One,
about.
The 8mm home movie taken by Abraham Zapruder while standing near the grassy knoll.
I stood
And
there.
2,
I stood right
the third
there.
wounded man, James Tague, who was nicked by a fragment while standing near the triple underpass. The time frame 5.6 seconds established by the Zapruder film
Not
left no
the time.
Not
possibility
true.
of a full
Not
shot.
true.
So the shot of fragment that left a superficial wound on Tague's cheek had to come from one of the 3 bullets fired from the 6th floor of the depository. That leaves just 2 bullets. And we know one of them was the fatal headshot that killed Kennedy.
Actually, that could be the bullet. The fatal headshot that killed Kennedy could very well be the actual bullet that caused James Tague's injury, because as we know, the fragments that went forward after exiting the side of JFK's head, one hit the windshield, cracking it, another hit the chrome above the windshield, denting it. It's easily to postulate that a third fragment could have cleared the windshield just a little bit higher than the chrome and continued its way all the way down to the curb where Tague was. Either that fragment could have hit Tague, or a piece of the fragment could have lost some velocity after striking the curb, hitting Tague, or part of the curb itself could have been splashed up by the fragment and hit
Yep.
Tague.
It could have also been a fragment of bone coming from Kennedy's skull. It could have even been a fragment of glass coming from the windshield, because he had a very, very superficial wound. Like, I think he didn't even know he had been wounded at the time. Somebody else said, hey, you got something on your face there.
I tend to believe that it was a piece of the concrete that was splashed up, because it was. I think that would have given the concrete just the amount of velocity to do such a thing. I think a fragment hitting Tague would have been more of a more serious an injury.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. It was very superficial,
So now a
like it
single
did
bullet.
not require medical
A single
treatment.
bullet
I
now
believe.
has
Like,
to
he didn't
account
need
for the
stitches or
remaining
anything to
7
close
wounds in
it.
Kennedy and Conley. But rather than admit to a conspiracy or investigate further, the Warren Commission chose to endorse the theory put forth by an ambitious junior counselor, Arlen Specter, one of the grossest lies ever forced on the American people.
Pause it for a second.
come to know it as
People
the magic
try to
bullet.
put the blame for the single bullet theory on Arlen Specter and make him into this villain, but the truth is that, in my opinion, the real author of the single bullet theory is actually
David Bellin.
Not even. It's Humes. It's Humes in the Bethesda autopsy, because within the first 48 hours, the 3 doctors at Bethesda, it was Humes who wrote the autopsy report, and before he submitted it, he gave it to the other doctors to let them review it, and they all agreed, and then they signed off on it. But in that report, he says that a single projectile fully transited Kennedy's body, entering in the back and exiting through the throat in the front. And that's really the crux of the single bullet theory, whether or not that one projectile fully transited his body. That's where you get most of the objections. I mean, you get objections everywhere, but most commonly, that's what I hear. I hear that the throat wound is a wound of entry,
Right.
and that the back wound didn't go all the way through. So within the first 48 hours, you have Humes and the other doctors at Bethesda writing this report saying that the bullet fully went all the way through, it fully transited him. So, you know, you can put the blame on Bellin, you can put it on Specter, but in my opinion, really, the real culprit, the real author of the single bullet theory are Humes and the Bethesda autopsy doctors.
Well, the first part of the theory would have come from the Bethesda doctors, because I don't think they really thought that the bullet injured both men.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, actually David Bellin takes credit for coming up with the single bullet theory, or at least being part of the development of it with Arlen Specter. Most people don't know that, but if you will watch him speak, and he's had I think he went on with David Buckley once. He's
I'm not sure.
William Buckley Jr.
Yeah,
on his program
I know
Firing Line. He was on his program Firing Line. He talked that, you know, he said that he was part of the development of the single bullet theory with David Bellin.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's where it was developed. I think that when you put everything together, that's how it was developed, and it was the way the conspiracists make it appear is though the government needed it to be a single bullet, so they figured out a way to make it a single bullet when that's not the case at all. They put the evidence together, and the evidence told them that one bullet did this.
Yeah.
The theory. The magic bullet.
Oh God.
Enters the president's back, headed downward at an angle of 17
This may take
degrees.
some time because they're demonstrating and we're pausing as soon as you start in this demonstration. May take just a little bit of time. The person who they get this idea from is Sarah Weck. I believe he was a consultant on the movie. Was he a consultant on the movie? I think.
Oh yeah, I believe he was.
I think he was one of them.
But I have seen videos of Wecht doing this exact demonstration. So I think they just carbon copied it for the movie.
I believe that's exactly what happened. But as we know, Jim Garrison was not even in the courtroom, so it's ludicrous that he would be the one to be doing this. But anyway, they wanted to have it in film because it's very theatrical.
It is, yeah, it is.
And the thing that we point out a lot in on the social media, Fair Play for JFK on Facebook specifically, is the fact that most of the pictures taken of the motorcade, when they show the juxtapositions of the two men, Connolly is seated much lower than Kennedy. And every time it's demonstrated by Sarah Weck, they are always level. And in some demonstrations I've seen him do, the person who plays Connolly was actually higher than Kennedy. So it's just a complete misnomer. And
yeah.
It's a parlor trick.
Yeah, it is. It's a total misrepresentation of like every single fact related to this, you know?
And you can't refute the evidence. It's just total, irrefutable, and common sense evidence. When you look at the configuration of the limousine, the seats are not level. And that alone should tell you that the men were not seated level or flush with each other, because the jump seat is farther inboard than the rear seat.
Yep.
And look at any picture of the motorcade. You will see Kennedy's, the side of his torso is resting against the right side inside of the door with his arm elevated and on the door.
Yeah.
So he's all the way to the right.
Yeah, he's right at that side of the car, and Connolly is further inboard.
Yes, there's space between Connolly's arm and the door.
Yeah, I think those doors were suicide doors, weren't they? They opened out, right? Instead of opening like this, they opened like that. No, wait, no, sorry, they were regular doors. My mistake. They were not suicide doors.
I think you can, if you watch like some of the film at Parkland, you can see how they open.
Yeah, I think they just open like regular
Not Parkland,
doors.
but at Love Field.
Yeah, I think they open like regular car doors. Suicide doors open like that, and regular car doors open.
You know
like
that?
that.
I'm not even sure. You might be right.
No, I don't. I thought it for a second, but now on second thought, I don't think that's right. I think they're just regular, normal car doors.
And moves upward
We'll check it out.
in order
Yes,
to
easily
leave
found
Kennedy's
out.
body from the front of his neck. Wound number 2, where it waits 1.6 seconds, presumably in midair, when it turns right, then left, right, then left.
Yeah, it doesn't do any of that.
And another thing, a lot of people believe, they're not informed, of course, but there's people who actually believe that the Warren Commission actually purports this to be the fact that the bullet turned and
this is not what the Warren Commission said. This is
people believe that they said this.
Yeah, I know, but it's not like so many other things in this case. It's not true. This is not what the Warren Commission said. This is the conspiratorial interpretation of what the Warren Commission says. Because when you guys have the two subjects incorrectly positioned, this is the crazy shit you have to do to get the wounds and the trajectory to line up.
And that's why a person like Sarah Weck does not want to align them correctly.
Yeah. Because then it would just immediately, if you had them aligned correctly. Fred and I were talking about this earlier tonight, and Jim Hess a while back actually made a meme of something I said to him. In my own personal story of this, one of the moments that I'll always remember was the first time I saw a photograph of SS-100X in the garage, and it had they had the doors open and the car was empty, and you could clearly see that the back seat that Kennedy was on was much higher than the seat that Connolly was on. Once I saw that, it kind of just instantly clicked inside my mind, and suddenly the single bullet theory all made sense, you know?
Yes.
It all made sense. So if you were ever to actually do a presentation like this, but you correctly position the subjects, there's a very good possibility that somebody in the audience will have an experience similar to the one I had, where they'll say, oh, wait a minute, that actually kind of makes sense,
Right.
you know?
And that's why I like to show very often how the two men actually appeared in the limousine, and I will make a composite and place it right directly next to an image of Sarah Weck doing this very demonstration that we see on the screen.
Yeah.
And it shows you the difference.
Yeah.
And continues into Conley's body at the rear of his right armpit. Wound
Doesn't
number 3.
mention the weird entry
The
wound
bullet
on
then
Conley's
heads
back,
downward
how it's
at an angle of
elongated and
27
not
degrees,
normal entry wound shaped, how it's like oval shaped. Doesn't even talk about bullet tumble, but I don't expect him to. Right at the end of this, he's going to say the bullet makes a dramatic U-turn and buries itself in his leg. No, it was always tumbling. It's just by the time it got to his leg, it was flying backwards at that point.
Yes, and they do not want to address the shape of Connolly's back wound. It was in yaw when it hit Connolly in the back, and the only way a bullet will be in yaw after traveling such a short distance, I think it was 65 feet at that point, or 65 yards at that point. There's no way a bullet would be tumbling like that unless it's destabilized by some intervening material. And so now the question becomes, what intervened? What came between the bullet and Connolly to make it give Connolly that wound? It hit something first.
Yeah.
Now, what was that?
What interrupted its ballistic arc? What interrupted its
stability
pattern?
Yeah.
You know?
What interrupted this? What made it unstable at that point to go into a yaw before it hit Connolly?
And Connolly's fifth rib and exiting from the right side of his chest. Wound number 4. The bullet then turns right and re-enters Connolly's body at his right wrist. Wound number 5.
Well, you're making it turn right because you're putting Connolly's wrist in the wrong place.
Yep.
Connolly's wrist, he's holding a hat at the time, and his wrist is right in front of his chest.
Yeah. And also, Connolly, at the moment he was hit, he's not sitting looking straight ahead. His whole upper body is turned, trying to look over his right shoulder.
And I believe the House Select Committee on Assassinations measured it. They use three-dimensional geography to figure these things out, and they figured it was, I think, approximately 20% that Connolly was turned.
Yeah. He definitely was not facing forward. That's the crux of that.
The bullet then exits Connolly's wrist, wound number 6, makes a dramatic U-turn, and buries itself into Connolly's left thigh. Wound number 7, from which it later falls out and is found in almost pristine condition on a stretcher in a corridor of Parkland Hospital.
That's Jack Ruby planting it. I don't know if that guy was actually supposed to be Jack Ruby, but I have heard that claim that Jack Ruby was at Parkland in the aftermath, and he's the one that planted CE39.
I have no problem with Jack Ruby actually being at Parkland.
No, me neither. He was often at the scene of any goings on, you know?
But the condition of the bullet is widely criticized. I criticize it because I didn't believe a bullet should retain such form after what it went through. But it all goes to how much energy meets the bullet at the time that it impacts. That determines how much damage the bullet's going to have. The bullet has to have a certain amount of velocity to have enough energy to fail the structure of the bullet. And particularly the Carcano bullet, there's a failure velocity of that bullet. You could also call it a damage threshold. So there's a certain amount of speed at which the bullet would begin to damage, and it happens to be 1,700 feet per second. None of these things are discussed when they talk about the single bullet theory, because it explains why the bullet is not damaged the way some people believe it should be.
Yeah.
The bullet was not traveling fast enough at the time of the first impact to bone to be damaged. It was going too slow because it had already passed through Kennedy's neck, slowing it down to a velocity below damage threshold velocity.
Yeah.
So it had the amount of damage you would expect it to have, if you are familiar with the kind of damage that would happen under a bullet of a certain speed. And so it goes to essentially, and to make it simple, a bullet is damaged according to the energy put into it, and that energy is determined by the velocity at impact.
Yeah, force equals mass times speed.
Some fancy physics in a nuclear laboratory. Of course they can. Theoretical physics can prove that an elephant can hang from a cliff with his tail tied to a daisy. But use your eyes, your common sense.
Physics cannot prove that.
The Army wound ballistics experts at Edward
That's
Austin.
a straw man argument.
Comparison bullets.
There's never
Not
been
one
a
of them
physicist
looked
that said an
anything like
elephant can hang from a cliff with his tail tied to a daisy. You
Some
just
kind of
made that up.
pseudo-physics, Will.
Oh, yeah, but that's not real
Identical
physics.
bullets.
Okay, now I have to comment on this. This is directly from Sarawak. The Jim Garrison character is showing a bullet that is severely damaged by being shot through the cadaver of a human wrist.
Yeah.
And then he's going to compare it to 399, which is a very unfair and failed parallel, because the bullet that hit the cadaver's wrist was shot directly into the wrist, and which means that it was at almost the highest velocity. If it's going 2,000 feet per second or more, it is going to be severely damaged when it hits bone. If it's going about 19 or less, it'll be damaged, but it won't be severely damaged like what they're showing.
Human bones are dense, and if a projectile at high speed hits a bone nose on, it is going to be damaged. It's going to mushroom, it's going to fragment, it's going to do all that stuff. The thing to remember with CE-399 is the first time it hit a bone, it had already lost a lot of speed having passed through Kennedy without hitting a bone, and it was flying sideways. So sure enough, where does the bullet show damage? It shows damage on its side.
There you go.
Tied to the wrist of a human cadaver. Just one of the bones smashed by the magic bullet. 7 wounds, gentlemen.
The bones in the wrist
Tough
are
skin.
actually pretty small
Dense
and
bone.
can be broken relatively easily
This
as compared to
single
other
bullet
bones in the
explanation
body. People get broken
foundation
wrists
of
all
the
the
War
time.
Commission's
All
claim
the
of-
time that happens.
And the other thing is, it doesn't matter how many more bones the bullet hit. If it's below damage threshold velocity, it makes no difference at all.
Yeah.
So once the bullet is, if the first bone didn't damage the bullet, no other bones is going to, because it's going too slow at this point.
A lone assassin. And once you conclude the magic bullet could not create all 7 of those wounds, you have to conclude that there was a fourth shot and a second.
And just one more thing on this. From the bullet's perspective, the bullet doesn't see 7 wounds. The bullet sees 3 impacts. The impact to Kennedy's neck, the impact to Connolly's rib, the impact to Connolly's wrist. There is an impact to Connolly's thigh, but it's very nominal, so the bullet doesn't really recognize that as something that causes bullet damage to itself.
Yeah.
So it's really only 3 impacts. When people say 7 wounds, it sounds big and exaggerated.
Yeah.
But the bullet experienced just 3 impacts.
Yeah, and that last wound to the thigh, at that point, its energy was pretty much spent. It barely had enough energy left to puncture the skin and bury itself in his leg. And it was so, like, flimsily buried in his leg that in just moving him onto the stretcher, that was enough for it to fall out.
It was just below the skin and the fatty tissue, and there's documentation that anyone can look up and see that.
Rifleman. And if there was a second rifleman, then by definition, there had to be a conspiracy.
It's nice to see the motorcade
believe it
in
involves the accused
sharp,
Ray Shaw.
crisp images like that,
51
you know?
witnesses, gentlemen of the jury, thought they
I'm
heard
pretty sure
shots
we saw this
from the
model
grassy
today.
knoll.
You think it's the same one?
I think so, because I'm looking at the building at the corner of Maine and Houston, that red building there.
Combat vet.
It looked very similar in terms of like where it was cut off. So unless they replicated this model entirely, then it might be the same model.
William Newman, father of 2 children, who hit the deck on the north side of Elm. Abraham Zapruder.
This is a really good scene.
Yeah, it is. Cue the sinister music. The model we saw, unfortunately, did not have the motorcycles.
Each of these key witnesses has no doubt.
This model, I wonder if it's the same because it has a picture, and it says it doesn't say Bush Lady. It says Beverly, and then it has guys on the fence shooting. It shows a guy at the fence shooting. So maybe this is not the same one.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Unless-
Or maybe
unless-
they just took parts of it out. You know.
That's possible.
Or maybe in between the time this model was made for the movie and the time it was donated to the 6th floor museum, parts of it had gone missing. You know. I mean,
do we know that though, that it was donated to the museum?
I don't. I'm just speculating about that because I honestly do think it's the same model unless they replicated it, because that building, that red brick building, not the red building on the, if you're looking north on Main on the right side, but on the left side of Main at the intersection of Houston. I remember coming around and filming it today at the 6th floor museum, and it was cut off in exactly the same way that this model has that building cut off.
Well, we have pictures of it. Someday,
Yeah.
maybe someday I'll just turn this movie on and compare it with the pictures that I took today.
Yeah, definitely.
26 trained medical personnel at Parkland Hospital saw with their own eyes the back of the president's head blasted out.
No, they didn't. That's just made up.
Dr. Peters.
There was a large 7-centimeter opening in the right occipital parietal area. A considerable portion of the brain was missing there. Almost a fifth, or possibly a quarter, of the back of the head had been blasted out, along with the underlying brain tissue.
That's not what we see in the Zapruder film. That's not what we see on the autopsy x-rays. That's not what we see in the autopsy photos. And of course, the answer for this is to say, well, fake news.
That's Robert Groden, right there.
Oh yeah, is that Robert Groden?
That's Robert Groden.
Parkland Hospital.
Oh man, you were so young, Robert.
Anything but a wound of entry.
You're so handsome back in the day,
Then
bro.
the body was illegally moved to Washington for the autopsy.
It was not illegally moved. The district attorney gave permission for the body to be taken to Washington.
Did you see Marshall try to pass off that fake Kennedy head as Kennedy's actual head?
Yep.
What a fraud.
Yeah. Pause it for a second. So Fred and I were in the plaza today talking to some people, and a guy was showing us photos of a head wound. And one of them, I recognized it. It's a fake photo. It's from the movie JFK.
He was passing it off as genuine.
Yeah, he was trying to tell me that was real, and I kept telling him, this is not real. This is from Oliver Stone's JFK.
That was Marshall doing that. Which he knows better.
He knows it's fake. He knows it's fake, but this is what he does. This is his bag, you know? I'm sure this might be a significant source of income for him, you know? He doesn't want your money because he doesn't need it. He can give his talk and then hawk some DVDs and make, 10 times what you were offering him.
Probably so. But it's just sad because other people that come there, they're not going to know any better.
Yeah, they don't know that. I saw a person today pay $200 for a hardcover version of The Killing of a President for his wife. And aside, he said to me, I was telling him, back in the day when I was a young kid, I actually had a hardcover version of this book. And he turned to me and he shook his head. He goes, dude, I just paid $200 for that, man. And his wife was the one talking to Robert Groden. So from that, I kind of got the interpretation that his wife was more into it than he was,
Yeah.
Friday afternoon was not so much a takeoff as it was a getaway with the newly sworn in president.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. On the plane, of course, Lee Harvey Oswald's guilt was announced by the White House Situation Room to all passengers before any kind of investigation had started. The angry lone nut solution beginning to take its shape.
I don't think his guilt was announced. I think it was more, hey, they arrested somebody.
Please bottle the...
Yeah, he's out of line. I mean, this is not the opening statement or the final argument or anything like that. This is a cross-examination time, I believe.
Yep.
This is not the time you do this. I mean,
you're only supposed to ask questions during cross-examination. You're not supposed to make statements. And the defense counsel here is right to object, and the judge is right to sustain that objection.
But the judge is allowing him to go through this thing.
Well, like, we keep seeing them say objection sustained, objection sustained, like you can tell, like, look at the scene we have it paused on right now. Like, that judge looks pretty fed up to me.
But for movie purposes, they had to get all that in.
Oh, yeah, for drama and plot purposes.
The 3 Bethesda Naval Hospital doctors picked by the military left something to be desired, and so
No, let it go a little bit more.
much as none of them had any experience with combat gunfire wounds.
Pause it. That's a bunch of bullshit. Lieutenant Commander Humes was the director of the Navy's director of laboratories, and in his capacity as being the Navy's director of laboratories, he oversaw plenty of autopsies. In the fall of 1963, Commander Humes was rotating back to the United States, having recently served a tour of duty aboard the USS Saratoga. The Saratoga was a hospital ship operating in the South China Sea as part of the 7th Fleet, I believe. And during his tour of duty on that ship, he conducted numerous autopsies of American service personnel who had been killed in combat in Vietnam. Dr. Frick from the Edgewood Arsenal in Maryland Fink?
Yeah.
Okay, he was a highly regarded wound ballistics expert. He was actually contacted by the Navy pathologist to attend and participate in this autopsy because of his expertise in wounds ballistics. He was highly regarded in his
I
field.
believe Fink was the only of the three who actually had expertise in forensic autopsies.
Yeah.
Legal forensic autopsies.
Yeah.
The other two weren't experienced in legal forensic autopsies, the ones that you want to do when you possibly could arrest a perpetrator and take him to court.
Yeah.
Only Fink was experienced in that in that sense. But the other ones have been did have experience in doing autopsies.
Yep, and he was presented. None of them had ever done an autopsy on anyone killed by combat gunfire wounds. That's just an outright lie. That is not true. That's an outright lie. A quick point: if you have to utilize outright lies to advance your truth, then you never had the truth to begin with.
Right.
Through their autopsy, we've been able to justify 8 wounds and just 2 bullets. 3 to Kennedy, 5 to Condon. One of them being the magic bullet.
I think they might have just flashed that photo that we saw today for like a fraction of a second.
I saw it more than once.
The family
Okay.
wanted examination of the head.
Oh, Christ.
Let's weigh it. 653 grams.
As a pathologist, it was your obligation to explore all possible causes of death, was it not?
I had the cause of death.
Your Honor, I would ask you to direct the witness to answer my question.
Actually, in a full
Why did
autopsy,
Colonel Fink not dissect the
they're
track of the
supposed
bullet
to
wound?
shave the head. They're supposed to.
They wouldn't do that because it was John Kennedy.
Yeah, I know, but they're supposed to. I don't know if back in 1963 they were supposed to do that, but I know nowadays in a full autopsy, they're supposed to shave the head.
I can feel the end of the wound with my finger. That won't be necessary.
Because bullets only travel a certain depth and stop. Like 1 inch.
Yeah, like that much. Not even 1 inch, a fraction of an inch.
I am.
And I mean, like, other explanations, the guy's been dead for hours. Rigor mortis could be setting in, you know?
And when you are called in circumstances like that to look at the wound of the president who is dead, you don't look around a lot to ask people for their names and who they are.
But you were a qualified pathologist. Was this Army general a qualified pathologist?
Intensely
No.
private to the Kennedy
No,
family.
but you took his orders.
Yes.
So he was directing the autopsy?
No.
No?
No, because there were others.
Is that Fink?
There were others. There were admirals.
Well, there were
Is that Fink he's interviewing?
I
You are a lieutenant colonel of the
believe
Army. You just
so.
followed
Wasn't that the only one of the
Not our
autopsy
business.
doctors who testified at
Discuss
the
this
Shaw trial?
with
I
anything
don't think did.
outside this
Okay,
room.
so then yeah, that's probably
Penny,
Fink.
Surgeon General of the Navy.
I don't know if the other two did or
Specifically
not.
told not to discuss the case.
A lot of people that day were deciding what was private, none of the American people's business. The chief pathologist, Commander Humes, by his own admission, voluntarily burned his autopsy notes. President Johnson orders the blood-soaked limousine filled with bullet holes and clues to be immediately washed and rebuilt.
See, he's giving the
Sends
final
John Connor's
summation
bloody suit
during
right to the cleaners.
A
cross-examination.
The Justice
yeah.
Department denied this office access to the autopsy photos.
Objection, Your Honor.
When we
Speculation.
finally get a court order to examine President Kennedy's brain in the National Archives, in the hopes of finding from
That's
which
a nice
direction
tie
the
he's wearing,
bullet
though.
came
Yeah,
from,
it is. Very classy.
we're told by the government, your government, that the president's brain has disappeared.
Like, was the government supposed to hold on to his brain
That's not
for
all
years and
this
years and
gentlemen.
years?
We did not
It's
think the
Yeah,
concept of
I think
justice.
so.
Objection, Your Honor.
You have to return that to the family. Like, even eventually, in a homicide.
I think there's a problem with the paper trail, though, as far as it going back to the family. That's why there's so much mystery and
we
speculation.
don't know entirely for certain.
So what really
Pause it for a
happened that
second.
day?
But we know that there was a locker containing a bunch of medical evidence that was turned over to Evelyn Lincoln, President Kennedy's secretary. And then when JFK was reinterred in, I believe it was in 64 or 65, they built the permanent site where he now rests today. There's a bunch of photos of them doing the work at night, and Ted and Bobby are there, and there's a little wooden box that Bobby has with him, and it has been proposed that this is the box that contains his brain and other samples that they took from his body. Like, was the government supposed to hold on to his brain forever? At some point, you have to release it to the family. You do the investigation, you collect the evidence, and then when you're done, you turn it over to the family for burial.
But I do agree with Sarah Webb on this point. They did not section the brain, and they did not dissect it the way they should have.
Yeah, it was a sloppy autopsy in some respects, but that isn't to say that it was incompetently done or that it produced the wrong results. They did not follow established procedure because of the stature of the victim, and that was a mistake, and I will criticize the Bethesda doctors for that, but whatever criticisms I can make, the honest truth is they still came to the correct conclusion.
I think so.
And their peers in their discipline get behind them on that, with the exception of Cyril Webb.
Right.
We have the epileptic seizure around 12:15 p.m. distracting the police, making it easier for the shooters to move into their
Can we address him? He's known.
Yeah,
The
that was
epileptic
completely
later vanished,
false.
never checking into the hospital.
He didn't check into the hospital because by the time they got to the hospital, he had recovered, so he paid the ambulance fee and left.
I will give Garrison credit for this part because he did say this was speculation.
Yeah.
They were refurbishing the
Let's
Maudsley
just
department
for a
building,
moment
which allowed
speculate.
unknown
Like,
workmen in and
that's
out of
pretty
the
much
building.
all you've been doing since day
They
one,
moved
dude.
quickly into position, just minutes before the shooting. The second spotter on the radio talking to the other two teams has the best overall view.
So the people that are in there setting everything up, are they on the hit list to be killed because they have information?
Yeah. And you guys have them in there with like a radio, and the guy's got the radio receiver up to his ear, coordinating with like 3 teams, you know?
Fence above the grassy knoll, where the shooter and the spotter are first seen by the late Lee Bowers in the watchtower of the rail yard. They have the best position of all. Kennedy is close and on a flat, low trajectory.
There's literally people right on the other side of that fence. You know, it's funny, after a lifetime of studying this, having finally traveled to Dallas and seen Dealey Plaza with my own 2 eyes, you have to see it with your own 2 eyes. Once you're standing there and you realize how small that area is, instantly it becomes obvious how ridiculous this shit is.
Yeah. Unless you're in such a psychological, emotional state of conspiracy belief that you ignore the obvious. I did that. I ignored the obvious, and I had been to Dealey Plaza. I was just that biased and that invested into my beliefs. I didn't want to come out of that, so I kind of pushed it to the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And looked for excuses. That's actually what I did.
And you know what? I'm guilty. There was a time in my life when I was guilty of doing that too. I think every lone nutter who made that conversion has to have that reckoning with themselves. You know, the truth is, people can easily be deceived, and the easiest person for you to deceive is yourself.
That's true.
We've all done it. We've all done it in one way or another in our lives. One issue or another.
The first shot rings out. Sounding like a backfire, misses the car completely. Frame 161, Kennedy stops waving as he hears something.
Oh, wait. He just said, earlier they said, because the proof establishes that the time frame is 5.6 seconds. But he just said Kennedy stops waving at Zapruder frame 161. From Zapruder frame 160 to Zapruder frame 313 is 8.3 seconds. That's a huge flaw in the film right there.
Yeah, you didn't check your facts, bro. Got sloppy.
I just noticed that.
Yeah, good catch. I didn't notice that.
Frame 193, the second shot hits Kennedy in the throat from the front.
And then stops for some reason, not producing an exit wound.
You can see that he's obviously been
See, look.
placing his arms to his throat.
It's like that.
Third shot, frame 230.
Well, his hands are closer together, one above the other.
And forward. Conley, you will notice, shows no signs at all of being hit. He's
Bullshit.
holding his Stetson, which
Did
is
you see him?
impossible if his wrist has been shattered. Conley is turning here now.
He's visibly holding his Stetson, which is impossible if his wrist has been shattered. But he was still holding that Stetson when he got to Parkland Hospital. He still had it in his hand.
Well, that's not exactly what
hit.
This was pointed out to me, and I had to admit that it was true. Nellie Connolly didn't say he had it clasped in his hand. She just said he was holding it against his chest.
Oh, okay.
Which he could have been just holding it with his arm, pressing it up against the head, which is true.
That is true.
But if you look at the Zapruder film, frames much further than this 234 where Connolly supposedly hit, he is holding that thing up into the 270s. And you can see it in his hand.
Okay.
234 shows it really well in his hand. But in the subsequent frames, you can still see it.
You know, John Connolly was Texas's native son, so wherever he is right now, I'm pretty sure he's still holding on to that hat, you know?
Well, I think those Texans, they, such as he, they, you know, you're not going to get rid of that, let go of that hat so easily. That's
it's a symbol of
an
like
appendage of their own body.
It's a symbol of like manhood and masculinity. You know, you can have it when you pry it out of his cold dead hands.
Jim Lavelle still wears a hat today, and the dude is almost 100 years old.
Yeah.
This time now, another shot that misses the car completely, strikes James Perry down by the underpass.
Why are all these shots missing the car completely? Not like it barely missed, it didn't hit the intended target. It misses the car completely. How did it miss the car completely?
Before they said they were hired like some of the best snipers like around. But you have guys just missing all over the place.
Yeah, I understand you missed the target. Okay, I can understand that, but that's a big car, man. 1961 Lincoln Continental extended limousine. Like, how do you miss the car completely? The thing weighs like 8,000 pounds empty.
Little shot, frame 313 takes Kennedy in the head from the front. This is the key shot. President going back and to his left. Shot from the front and right. Totally inconsistent with the shot from the depository.
Back and to the left. He's going to repeat this a bunch of times in a minute.
But an infamous moment in the Kennedy assassination conspiracy culture, an infamous moment in film history, back into the left.
And they really drill it in.
Yeah.
But if they were following the actual film and the film was analyzed by experts, they would first be saying down and forward, then back and to the left. Because if you compare Zapruder frames 312 to 313, which is an 18th of a second apart, you will see Kennedy's head in one position, and then 2.3 inches forward of that in the next frame. So 312 to 313 shows Kennedy's head move forward. Yeah. Also, another, if I could add to that, the back and to the left portion was a much larger movement over a much more extended period of time. Though relatively a short period of time when you're looking at it, but in terms of ballistics, it's a long period of time because it happens over 5 frames, and that's, I think it equates to like a third of a second, which is actually a long time when you're speaking ballistics. One frame, the head going from 312 to 313, and the movement happened inside of one frame. That's happening inside of 1 second. So if you look at it, what's more consistent with something being attributed to the cause of a bullet? Is it something which would occur within 1/18th of a second, or something that occurs over the course of 1/3 of a second?
Yeah. Look for a good spot to stop it because we're over 90 minutes and I want to cut this audio file. Just wait.
Right after back to the left.
Yeah, that's a good time.
Back and to the left. Back.
Look at that defense
and to the left.
table, man.
So what happens then?
Pandemonium. Alright, we're just going to pause it here real quick. I'm just going to save this audio file and we'll get back to you guys.